Hello, my name is Lauren, and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel, where today we're talking about the Harry Potter character who once punched Draco in the face. That's right, today we're diving into the dark truth about Hermione Granger. Because let's face it, while she's such a positive role model and one of the strongest female characters in young adult fiction, there's something not quite right about her. Maybe it's her unrelenting ambitious drive or tendency towards seething rage and violence, but there are some seriously undiagnosed issues here. Don't believe me? Want to watch some of the best clips from the Harry Potter series? Well then, stick around as I try to get to the bottom of Hermione Granger and whether or not we can actually diagnose her as a sociopath. But first, what exactly is a sociopath? Antisocial personality disorder is a term that refers to two distinct mental conditions characterized by a lack of empathy and disregard for the concepts of right and wrong. These are psychopaths and sociopaths. But what's the difference? Everybody has heard of a psychopath. These are the cold-blooded killers who feel no remorse for their heinous crimes. Antisocial personality disorder basically allows for a person to be manipulative, emotionally distant, dishonest, and cruel with no sense of guilt for their actions. People like Norman Bates, the Joker, or Hannibal Lecter. Sociopaths are very similar to psychopaths in all but a few distinct ways. In fact, some psychologists even consider them to be lesser psychopaths. One thing that really sets sociopaths apart is their ability to blend into society. There have been plenty of well-documented cases of people leading successful and happy lives who just so happen to also be sociopaths. In fact, things like having no remorse for morally questionable actions are actually extremely helpful habits for business practice. Who cares if what you're doing is illegal? You make money! Anyway, the other big difference between sociopaths and psychopaths is that sociopaths actually can form bonds with people. A psychopath may have no problem hurting a loved one, because to them, there's no such thing. But sociopaths can make friends. They can form attachments to other people that impact their decisions. Oh, and here's the other thing. None of this is black and white. We use terms like sociopath and psychopath, but really it's a broad spectrum, like most other disorders. So when I suggest that Hermione is a sociopath, I'm not saying she's absolutely insane and could possibly snap and kill everyone without a single regret. I just want to prove that she is strangely higher up on the scale than anyone had previously expected. Sure, this would make her more dangerous, but the evidence is pretty darn strong. Maybe Harry should have been watching his back more carefully all those years at school. So, how is someone diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder? Well, for one thing, these symptoms of apathy and violence have to be shown from a young age, meaning that elementary schools have to look out for possibly sociopathic behavior. Teachers have a specific list of behaviors and traits that could possibly point to a child having the disorder. And some of them are stranger than you might expect, like eating things that aren't food. I don't know about private schools, but I can guarantee if you were a kid with an unusual affinity for crayons, Mrs. Cooper was keeping her eye on you. But besides little quirks like licking glue sticks, a lot of the other traits were more sinister in nature, like bringing weapons to school or pathological lying. In fact, these symptoms of sociopathy often fall into two categories: criminal activity and a lack of social skills. So in order to prove that Hermione Granger possesses these traits, all we have to do is look at her behavior throughout the series. Let's start with criminal activity, because I guarantee it is worse than you think. And what better place to start than with violent assault and battery, because for all her creativity and smarts, Hermione sure can throw a punch. Besides her obvious fight scenes, Hermione resorts to an unnecessary amount of physical violence on three notable occasions. She body binds Neville on their way to find the Sorcerer's Stone. She tries to maim Ron with birds that one time, and wait, what was that last one? Come on, let's see it again. Okay, just one more time. I'm done now. Also, Hermione set someone on fire when she was 11. 11 people, and it was completely unnecessary too. She suspects Snape of putting a jinx on Harry's broom and needs to distract him. She could have just walked up behind him, tapped him on the shoulder, and said, "Hey, Professor." But no! She sneaks under the bleachers and sets him on fire. What the heck? There is something not right with this kid. She's even smiling. Anyway, physical assault is only the beginning of Hermione's deviant behavior when it comes to the law. Because for all her talk of integrity,
You shouldn't have done it.
when push comes to shove, Hermione is the biggest cheater at Hogwarts. And I'm not talking about all the times she let Harry and Ron copy off her homework, which is considered cheating, by the way. No. I'm talking about literally warping the space-time continuum to take more classes. But so what if Hermione wants to take a few more credits? Who's it hurting? Everyone. Everyone, gosh darn it, everyone in her grade. Because I don't know if being the top of your class at your school is very important, but some places take valedictorian very seriously. You get better scholarships and internships, it looks better on applications and resumes, it's a big deal. Why do you think characters like Terry Boo and Ernie Macmillan are constantly talking about how she's top of their class? It's a big stinking deal. But Hermione used a time turner to go back and take more classes than anyone else in the school. It's not fair, and guess what? It's cheating. And for what? Muggle studies? She's a Muggle born. The only reason she is taking that class is to get more credits than everybody else. And she outright breaks Hogwarts rules all the time in order to accomplish her own goals. For instance, she's the one who hexes Cormac McLaggen in order to keep Ron on the Gryffindor Quidditch team.
That was different.
And she's the one who smuggled all of the worst banned books about Horcruxes out of Dumbledore's office right after he died. Man, the headmaster's funeral was really sad. Ooh, I can steal from him now, to accomplish a mission he left for us, of course. And guess what else she does in order to accomplish that mission? She assumes the identity of a ministry official in order to infiltrate the government, and later helps to rob one of the most prestigious high-security banks in the world.
Sort of exciting, isn't it? Breaking the rules.
And in other news, she's the one who organized Dumbledore's army underneath Umbridge's nose. She came up with the idea, recruited the people, talked Harry into leading, and facilitated the meetings with her contraband coins, for which she literally took inspiration from the Death Eater's dark marks. But okay, you know what else she does throughout the entire series? Manipulate her friends into carrying out her plans. She's the one who persuades Harry to break into the restricted section.
Not in the restricted section. Happy Christmas.
She's the one who actually persuades Harry and Ron to drug their fellow classmates, shove them in a broom closet, steal parts of their bodies, and then assume their identities. Oh yeah, let's talk about Polyjuice Potion. Because when she was 12 years old, Hermione stole ingredients from her professor and brewed an illegal, dangerous chemical in an abandoned girl's bathroom. You know what the real-world equivalence of this is, right? Hermione Granger basically started a meth lab in her middle school. And here's the other thing. For all her illegal actions and crimes, Hermione never gets into trouble. Harry and Ron get into trouble all the time. They serve detentions with Filch, Snape, Lockhart, Umbridge, pretty much in every book. But Hermione only ever serves one detention in the entire series. In her first year, with Hagrid. And you know what lengths she's willing to go to in order to hide her illegal behavior? Well, look at what happened to Marietta Edgecombe. When she ratted out Dumbledore's army to Umbridge, Hermione put a curse on her that caused her forehead to break out into permanent acne, spelling the word sneak. And you know how she did it? During the first DA meeting, without telling them, she forced all 28 members to sign a contract that bound them to silence about her criminal behavior. And this isn't even the worst crime she ever committed. Because in Goblet of Fire, Hermione straight up kidnaps and blackmails someone in order to bend them to her will. Oh yeah, Remember Rita Skeeter? It comes off as justice in the books, but when you actually look at what Hermione did, it's kind of insane. She locks a woman in a jar for weeks on end and literally blackmails her out of a job. And then a year later, she forces Skeeter to spread pro-Harry propaganda that Hermione approves of. Sure, it's true, but the Quibbler article is deliberately pushing her own political agenda. This isn't cute high school hijinks, this is felony. This is sociopathic behavior, people. Oh yeah, what did Rita Skeeter do to warrant her kidnapping? She published an article saying that Hermione had a boyfriend. Wow. But okay, clearly Hermione was willing to break rules and built herself quite the rap sheet. But in order to actually diagnose her with antisocial personality disorder, we have to look at how she behaves socially. And believe me, I saved some of the worst stuff for last. But before we get there, let's talk about Hermione's inability to make friends. Let's ignore Harry and Ron for a second. Besides the rest of the Golden Trio, Hermione doesn't really click with anyone else in her grade. Take the other two Gryffindor girls, Lavender and Parvati. We all know the rocky relationship between Lavender and Hermione. I don't really need to say much about that.
I happen to be his girlfriend. I happen to be his friend.
But these other girls mercilessly bully Hermione with snide remarks. It's not uncommon to find her in the bathroom alone crying. She helps Neville with some schoolwork a couple times, but they never actually hang out, and she openly gets into arguments with Luna throughout Order of the Phoenix. I quote, "Yes, he has an army of heliopaths," said Luna solemnly. "No, he hasn't," snapped Hermione. Later in the same fight, Luna accuses Hermione of being narrow-minded, and let's not forget that time that Hermione actually told Harry, "You can do better than her," and then proceeded to mock her father's business. So Hermione has some issues with social graces. The only other character I think she really gets along with in this school is Ginny, and that's not until the last couple books. And when Harry and Ron first meet her, they cannot stand the fact that she's smug, condescending, rude, callous, and generally dislikable.
Honestly, no wonder she hasn't got any friends.
The way Hermione acts throughout the series is also odd on a couple of levels. For instance, she's prone to violent and erratic mood swings. One minute she's happy at the old ball, the next Ron suggests maybe she shouldn't get too involved with a guy who's legally an adult.
What?
And now she's collapsed on the steps, screaming and sobbing.
Ron, you spoiled everything!
Okay, that's a proper reaction. Or she's sulking in dark corridors and attacks Ron when he asks what the birds are doing. And then collapses on the steps sobbing. And what's really weird is that these breakdowns are some of the only times we see Hermione's emotions. Because normally she wants to be seen as a sarcastic robot.
It's not going to work.
She rationalizes everything, and her demeanor is cold and brutally blunt.
You don't use your eyes, do you?
Yeah, besides the occasional glimpse of joy, Hermione is in a constant state of being slightly annoyed with everything around her. Actually, in the book series, Harry and Ron often turn to her for emotional advice. But have you ever actually paid attention to how she responds? She answers like they're test questions, ones she's studied for.
Obviously she's feeling sad about Cedric, and therefore confused about liking Harry and guilty about kissing him. Conflicted because Umbridge is threatening to sack her mom from her job at the ministry, and frightened of failing her OWLs because she's so busy worrying about everything else.
Hermione views other people like school problems. She studies their behavior and then rationalizes it in a way she can dissect and process.
Look at her eyes. They've been fighting again, her and Dean.
Maybe because she actually has a very hard time empathizing with other people. She has to logically sort things out like variables on a math test or arithmancy test. Whatever.
Just because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon.
No, Hermione, you do. You're either cold and unfeeling or literally collapsed on a staircase sobbing. You have no in-between. But okay, you still don't believe me. I have two more points I want to bring up. And this next one is kinda left field, because another trait of sociopaths is an inability to make and keep long-term plans. And I know what you're thinking. What? Obviously Hermione is like the most organized person at Hogwarts. Clearly she can't be a sociopath. But here's the thing. Hermione has no long-term plans. Think about it. She lives for the next test. She obsesses over them. She acts like every individual quiz is going to make or break her career.
She needs to sort out her priorities.
But what exactly is that career? Hermione never talks about her plans after Hogwarts. In Order of the Phoenix, when they're going over possible career paths, someone flat out asks Hermione what she wants to do after school. And she answers in what is possibly the only time she does so in the entire series, with the words, "I don't know." What? There's this other time Ron is reading the description of a Gringotts Cursebreaker, which is basically traveling the world seeking treasure and adventure. And Hermione responds, "I don't much fancy banking." Like she wasn't even listening. And in Deathly Hallows, the Prime Minister himself asks if she's considering becoming a lawyer, to which she responds, "No, I'm not. I'm hoping to do some good in the world." And don't go throwing out her Minister for Magic title from The Cursed Child, because personally I find that to be one of the most out of character decisions in the whole play. And also, Hermione is the one who goes back to school after the Battle of Hogwarts. Think about that decision for a second. Can you imagine choosing to take one more year of high school after you graduated? Harry and Ron aren't there anymore, and she could have easily gotten any job she wanted after her involvement in the war. And yet, she chooses to stay at Hogwarts. Not as a teacher or anything, she just refuses to move on in her life. Okay, if nothing I've said has convinced you that Hermione was a sociopath, I have one final piece of evidence to tie everything all together. It's criminal, strange, and possibly the most insane part of her story. Let's talk about Hermione's relationship with her parents. Because frankly, it's some of the most understated tension in the entire book series, and it's really easy to miss with all of Harry's family problems. But think about this. Why does Hermione spend so much time at the Burrow? We don't see the Grangers very much in the series. I think they appear once in Chamber of Secrets. Hermione's parents were waiting nervously at the counter, waiting for Hermione to introduce them. Okay, a couple of things here. First of all, waiting to be introduced. But the book makes it very clear that Hermione never actually does that. It's actually Arthur who takes up the initiative and starts a conversation, but there is no indication that Hermione was ever going to bring her parents into the conversation. She literally abandons them to go hang out with the Weasleys. And this kind of happens a lot. For instance, winter break in Order of the Phoenix. Initially, Hermione's on a skiing trip with her parents, but then she gets bored and lies to them. When she arrives at number 12 Grimmauld Place, she tells Harry, "Anyway, Mum and Dad are a bit disappointed, but I've told them that everyone who's serious about the exams is staying at Hogwarts to study." Then she quickly changes the subject. Hermione, you're not at Hogwarts. You just lied to your parents for virtually no reason. Throughout the series, we also see Hermione growing more and more annoyed at the fact her parents aren't wizards. She begins to disconnect from the Muggle world.
My parents are dentists.
In Goblet of Fire, she deliberately goes against her parents' wishes to fix her teeth with braces and tricks Madame Pomfrey into shortening them. In Order of the Phoenix, she delivers the most backhanded line when she asks to borrow Hedwig to tell her parents she was made prefect, because that's at least something they can understand. And did anyone else ever wonder why we never see them pick her up at King's Cross? The Weasleys, the Malfoys, and even the Dursleys make brief appearances, but we never once see the Grangers. What, did she walk home? Also, I am 98% confident she never told her parents she was in a coma during her second year, because Hogwarts never alerted them, and they sent her back the next year no problem. Dean Thomas even admits that the best way to keep Muggle parents from worrying is to never tell them what goes on at school. By the way, Hermione spends at least part of her summer at the Weasleys in books 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. After the first couple of books, she hardly mentions her parents at all. This kinda makes sense since she was constantly bullied for being a Muggle-born. I think we have a strong argument to say that she was legitimately ashamed of this. She doesn't kill her Muggle relatives like Voldemort, but she does actually get rid of them. Oh yeah, in case you forgot, Hermione Granger permanently erases her parents' memories in the 7th book. In order to protect them, of course. But, you know, I feel like there were other ways to do that besides wiping their memories and convincing them to move to Australia. And by the way, we know that this memory charm is irreversible. It's the same one that backfires on Lockhart, and that permanently damaged his mind. So, was Hermione really just trying to protect her parents from Death Eaters looking for answers? Or was she also severing her final ties to the Muggle world? After all, it was the most logical thing to do, the most permanent and effective solution to the problem. The only thing that really gets in the way is emotional ties and empathy, right? Well, that's not a problem if you're a sociopath. One who values logic and reason over family and emotion. Every single time. Okay, but seriously, what do you guys think? Like I said, sociopathy isn't an on and off switch. So have I convinced you that Hermione is higher up on the scale than we thought before? And if so, does that surprise you? Because I was shocked. Anyway, if you liked this video, you should click that big red subscribe button for more very nerdy content just like this. This channel has covered everything from psychology and ocean currents to neuroscience and music theory. So if you like to overthink everything, this is the place for you. You can also follow us on Twitter at theory_central. But that's all I have to say today, so thanks for watching. Don't start meth labs in your middle school, and I'll see you later.
I think we've had a bad influence on her.